All right, today's demonstration is going to be on a classic dish from Chinese cuisine called broccoli beef. It's a special treat for us this year in class because the broccoli we are using is organic broccoli from our friend Toby Hastings at Free Spirit Farms out at the Center for Land-Based Learning in Winters. And our beef this year is prime grade tri-tip purchased from Costco. So this part of the video we're going to show you how we get the marinade done and also the cutting of the meat to get it ready to go for later in the cooking process. The recipe makes mention of the fact that we want a bowl that is non-reaction to potential acids that are going to come from some of the ingredients in the marinade. So we want to get a glass bowl or ceramic dish as so, definitely avoiding metal. And in this bowl already for the marinade, we have a teaspoon of cornstarch, which is going to help for thickening, a teaspoon of kosher salt or sea salt, a teaspoon of sugar, and we still have a couple more seasonings to put in, including some oil. So, still left to put in would be 1/8 a teaspoon of white pepper. So there is not 1/8 of a teaspoon on our measuring spoons. So when we need 1/8 of a teaspoon, we basically take a 1/4 teaspoon and use it half full. That's 1/8. It may be surprising to you to see how gray the white pepper is, kind of misleading, but it is a black peppercorn that has had the outer black shell removed before it's been crushed up. So it's not as true white as one might expect. If you don't have white pepper at home, you can certainly get by with black pepper. We still need a teaspoon of soy sauce. And we're going to need a tablespoon of vegetable oil, cooking oil. And we're using canola. Now this mixture may not seem like it's much in quantity, but we are only going to be using 1 pound of beef in this particular recipe. This portion can of course be changed. And we just want the meat to have a light coating. So if we want to take and mix this up with our chopsticks, and eventually our fingers will get in there as well, we're going to go ahead and get on with the meat slicing. So we can get this and put it off to the side. Now, for our beef, the recipe mentions that we're just using 1 pound of meat. What we're using today is tri-tip. The recipe says that we sometimes use beef flank or tenderloin. You also can use skirt steak. The flank steak comes from the back part of the cow near the belly. So it is a muscle that gets worked pretty regularly because of the breathing of the animal. We also sometimes will see, besides flank steak, skirt steak, which is another well-developed muscle. But today we're using tri-tip, and we're starting with putting our meat on the scale, seeing that we have 1.5 pounds of product. Now, this is a prime grade tri-tip, and the tri-tip itself comes from the bottom sirloin, the back quarter of the animal, kind of near where the belly meets the leg. It is a fairly worked muscle, so we have to be mindful of that when we think about how we're going to use this. The tri-tip is also known as the California cut, popularized in Santa Maria style barbecue. But we also come to hear that tri-tip used to be cut up and ground to make hamburger. I'm sure that was very, very tasty hamburger. We use it in many different dishes, but we do have to be mindful of something about the structure of meat, and that is the grain of the meat. So here's our tri-tip, about 1.5 pounds. And for this recipe, we are going to want to do a little trimming. Now these came already what we say peeled, where most of the fat is removed, but we do have a little bit of fat still to take off. So we're using our scimitar knives, okay, and our safe gloves coming off to the side. Any trim that we generate, we can put off to the side because it certainly could be recaptured for use in a broth. Okay, so there's still flavor in that. And I want to do what I can to get most of the fat off. Okay. And you can see that there is a little bit of a discoloration to this meat. This is from a roast that I bought a while ago. So it's been in the freezer for a while, which is fine for the purposes of our demonstration. You guys are working with brand new meat. Okay. Now, something about this. This intermuscular fat here is what we call the marbling. Okay? And it's kind of easier to see when there's great marbling in the tri-tip that we have the grain of the meat here, okay, that kind of runs in striations. So if you were to be working with a flank steak or a skirt steak, you would certainly see that this striation, these lines of the muscle structure are much, much more pronounced. So, the recipe talks about having a pound of meat, okay, which we're going to start cutting. We'll throw it on the scale, but also slicing it against the grain. We wanted to cut the tri-tip into 2-inch strips, which this basically is, getting a little bit narrow down here as it tapers. But we're going to want to cut this across the grain. So if the grain is running this way, then we're going to be cutting it this way. Now, we want this to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. We are cutting across the grain, which is going to help this meat to stay tender. You can certainly get an idea, as we said, about the marbling of the tri-tip. Also, the recipe talks about the fact that planning ahead, we would want this meat to be in the freezer for maybe 20-30 minutes to help firm it up, which I did ahead of time. And we do that because when this meat is slightly chilled, then it's easier for it to be cut super thin and to stay firm. Okay, so again, these are looking to be about 1/8 of an inch in thickness, and it's not much wider than the width of my blade. Now, I didn't start with raw meat that was put into the freezer. This went backwards. To get the deal that I was able to get at Costco, I bought myself a bag of tri-tip, and I had some left over, and I put it in the freezer, and then that came out of the freezer to defrost. So let's see how we are in our pound. We're at 14 ounces. So we're just perhaps a couple slices short, but we want to get to the full pound. We are. All right, this then is trim that could go with this to be used elsewise. But we have our meat, okay, that's trim that needs to go into the marinade. Now, traditionally, or our expectation in class, is that we cut red meat on a red board. However, with such a small job, it's perfectly fine to use the bamboo board, okay, so long as we keep that raw meat on top of the board, okay, and don't have it cross-contaminating anything else in the kitchen. And when we're done with the knife that was used and the bamboo board that was used, that we wash in hot soapy water and spray it with sanitizer to let it air dry. And so long as we do that, everything will be fine as far as cross-contamination. This bamboo board is small enough to go in the dishwasher. However, it never goes in the dishwasher because it is put together with glue and it may come apart. Okay, so that's not the way we take care of it. All right, so recipe says that this gets put into the marinade and allowed to sit for maybe 15-20 minutes. This was coming out, say, of the freezer or for a quick chill, so it can stay out at room temperature. That actually will make the muscle fibers relax so the marinade can soak in more, and we're not at risk of danger zone violation because it's only going to be out of refrigeration for another 20-30 minutes. Okay, so this is our meat. This is how we get it into the marinade. We need to do this early in the cooking process, set it off to the side. Time now for our cleanup.